Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we have a look at the 1970 Hammer film Scars of Dracula as part of our March to Halloween. This is episode 382. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it, so warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castle Bridge Media, home of the Castle of Horror anthology. With me from Austin, back from Fantastic Fest, is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy. It's good to be
Howdy.
back.
Thank you. We missed you last week. Yes, we were talking about
I'm
Son of
sure
Dracula.
everything was in good hands, but it is good to be back. Slightly more worn from the amount of cinema I've seen, but this was great to watch last night. So
How many movies did you? And by the way, Lee Freiling, yes, she held down the fort quite well. She did great.
Yeah, because she's awesome.
But yeah, how many movies did you watch in the time?
So I think 34 during the fest, and then at least 2 more since then through Fantastic Fest at home, and then P&I screenings to kind of review more. I wanted to review more movies and pass on more recommendations. But yeah, so I think by the end of it, there's a good chance that it'll be 40 plus movies within the space of 2 weeks. Less than 2 weeks.
So with the online, something like 40, but 34 in person at Fantastic Fest, like 5 a day.
Crazy.
Yeah. I missed one to go hang out with friends because there's some friends who are only in for, I see them.
Well, what the hell are you thinking?
I know, right?
That's amazing.
But when you got to hang out and eat some Tex-Mex and hang out with friends, sometimes that happens.
Wow. All right. Also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, which you can now find at Global Comics. I've been posting links to that. He is a Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the PEN America Fellowship. Say hello, Drew. Hello. And finally, also in Denver, we were looking at leaves today as we wandered in the mountains. Color commentary from Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
Hello. Yes, it was a lovely day to be in Colorado.
Yeah, it was gorgeous. Okay. Scars of Dracula. Scars of Dracula is a 1970 British horror film directed by Roy Ward Baker for Hammer Movies. It stars Christopher Lee as Count Dracula, Dennis Waterman, Jenny Hanley, Patrick Troughton, the second Doctor himself, Michael Gwynn, who we know from Revenge of Frankenstein. This film, one of the first things we talk about is the ugly, ugly things that the critics had to say about this movie. But the Count shows up as an icily charming host. He has command over nature. He has giant mutant bats that serve him. He can use his powers while sleeping. He has a lot of dialogue, which is a big deal compared with in Dracula, Prince of Darkness. So, the jury's out. We're going to talk about Scars of Dracula. So let's get our opening thoughts. We'll go Julia, Tony, Drew, and then I'll go. Julia, I don't know how it is that we never talked about this movie before, or that you probably have never seen it. So what are your opening thoughts, Scars of Dracula?
This is one of those where, I was very happy after having not had Christopher Lee for our last Dracula movie. Excuse me. To have Christopher Lee back, I just love him as Dracula, even if it was as he put it, a pantomime villain role. He says during an interview, he said, "I was a pantomime villain. Everything was over the top, especially the giant bat whose electrically motored wings flapped with slow deliberation as if they were doing morning exercises." No, but I loved him. I think he's fantastic every time as Dracula. He's just so fun to watch. The rest of it, it's not going to be one of those movies I'm going to remember for very long. But it's fine. It was an enjoyable film. There were some suspenseful moments, some neat costumes. It's good looking. But it's definitely not gonna stand out in my memory for very. I've probably already forgotten half of it even today.
All right. No, fair. Okay. Thank you. All right. Good start. Tony, what about you?
Oh, I enjoy this lurid, crazy movie. It is dark. It's interesting because in some ways they pay actually like pretty interesting respect to the original Dracula, like with where his coffin's located, where you have to climb down, like he's climbing around. All the Dracula's castle stuff is actually kind of close, and like it makes a pretty good sequel too, because you have a person who's abducted, all this stuff. But what it adds is, yes, I think budgetarily it's a shame the bats can't do more, but he does have a host of mutant bats, and he doesn't take any BS.
Right.
Like this Dracula is up there with like Palance and Yorga as far as like, oh no, I won't be meekly kind of puttering around. I'm gonna be doing a lot of stuff to a lot of people. And I
hope Dracula not to be trifled with, right?
Yeah, he's gleefully evil. Even if you never see the glee, he's icily evil, I guess. But wow. I like it. I think it's an interesting cast as well. I look forward to diving into it more, but this is a bloody, kind of cool, lurid, very bright, like all the reds just pop so much. I just love that palette that they have. This is cool to me. I'm glad to be back discussing this one. I'm glad I didn't skip it, because there's a lot to talk about.
Me too. Drew, I know you're a Hammer fan. I know you're not as much of a Hammer fan as some other worlds, but what are your thoughts about this?
I've seen this movie a couple times before. I think it's kind of a mixed bag, I guess. It's definitely not as bad as some would have you believe. Of course, as we were talking about last week with Son of Dracula, like a lot of movies are like that when they have just tepid reputations. Like they're never really as bad as all that, more often than not. I do think that this is a step down from some of the other Hammer vampire movies, although from Christopher Lee's for the perspective of Christopher Lee, he's given a lot more to do, and that he has like dialogue and stuff like that in this. I also really like the dynamic of the way the village is portrayed as this, as they're kind of held hostage by Dracula. The Clove character is really interesting to me too. It's sort of a a Renfield character, but without the name Renfield, but he essentially, serves that role. And all that stuff is good. The hero characters are a bit thin, and I definitely not as cool as like Peter Cushing as Van Helsing, that kind of thing. But it's a Hammer Dracula. It's fun to watch. There's much worse. I watched this early in the morning yesterday. There's definitely worse ways to pass time. It's a good time.
Thank you. So this is one of those ones that I had read about. First of all, I believe this is maybe the first Hammer movie I ever saw, because I have a distinct memory of coming back from Six Flags with my family and like going back to the bedroom at my grandmother's house where I was staying, and there was tiny little TV, black and white television that I turned on, and this movie was playing late at night. Which is probably a great way to take in Scars of Dracula, is as a kid watching it on like late night after you've been in an amusement park all day. But when I explored it once again years later, after not thinking about horror, after I got out of college, I picked up some books on horror, and I remember reading about this movie and how much everybody hated it. But I have to tell you that this is easily my favorite. It's either the first or second favorite Christopher Lee Dracula film for me, with Horror of Dracula being number one and this being number two, hands down. I feel like it's better than Dracula Prince of Darkness. I think it's easily way better than Dracula 80, 1972. You could maybe make arguments about Dracula Has Risen from the Grave being stronger than this, but I don't think so, because I feel like this one gives us a more fascinating Dracula. So for me, and let's get right into why don't people like this movie. there's been a received wisdom that this movie isn't very good, and I just want to read you some great quotes that I found when I was looking into this. Bruce Wright, in Nightwalkers, which Castlebridge Media actually published a new edition of, says the movie sports the production values of a Mexican soap opera. I'm not sure what that means, but it does not sound good. He says, it is not only hard to accept that this is a Hammer movie, at times it's difficult to believe it was made in a developed nation. New York Times called it garish, gory junk. Hammer Films by Johnson and Del Vecchio, which is a good book, says it has little to recommend it, awash in unappetizing sex and violence, totally lacking in artistry, and any comparison to the company's 57 classic would be unkind.
I like that some of these, I go, if I saw this on a, like, just not to go too far back, go to in a Fantastic Fest blurb, I'm like, okay, it's click. Like, that's my ticket for the day. There's the slot. Like, yeah, all the
Christopher Lee
gory, like, or I'm like, oh yeah, gory and garish, and
unappetizing sex and violence, awash. It's awash in it. Christopher Lee said
awash
it was terrible.
in sex and violence. Like,
yes,
isn't that what you looked for when you were looking for cable? Like, when you had access to cable at late night as a teenager, those
to be honest,
those
with
things
you,
that were like adult content, nudity, all that, those were not a warning, those are a recommendation.
Yes.
So
I'd be damn disappointed in this
bringing
movie,
endorsement.
actually.
Exactly.
Like this is not an Emmanuel movie. This doesn't even have the sexual content of a James Bond movie from, like I don't know. I mean, and Christopher Lee said in that interview that Joya cited, what's that?
It does have a James Bond girl in it.
Yeah.
Actually, two.
Right.
It says Anuska Hempel and Jenny Hanley had appeared in the James Bond film On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Goodness gracious! Well, yes, there's all those women at the villa in the mountains. So, and I just wanted to mention that Christopher Lee in the interview that Joya pointed out, he said that he hated the film, that he was terrible, that it wasn't like Dracula, blah blah blah. And then I watched a commentary with Christopher Lee where he watched this in like around 2000 or so, and he goes, something, I'm not sure I've ever actually seen this movie. And then he goes, this actually isn't all that bad.
He just didn't like doing it, I guess.
Well,
right.
I think it's telling that, Tony mentioned Count Yorga. Count Yorga came out the same year as this movie. Another thing that came out this year was El Conde Dracula with Christopher Lee in yet another disappointing Dracula. That one, although, that's a really fascinating it's a Jess Franco movie. We've covered it on this show. But tell me if y'all think that I'm like way too far out on a limb. I think the reason people hated this movie was really not because it wasn't as good as the old Hammers, but because it's frankly more or less the same, and it's just that everybody was tired of it. I mean, Rosemary's Baby came out in '68.
And the budget isn't great, and there are definitely some ups and downs to the through line.
It's very episodic. Like the script definitely has some problems, and I mean, let's face it, these kids are much more boring than Peter Cushing.
Oh yeah, no, there's not a Father Shandor like you have in Kiss of the Vampire.
And honestly, like you mentioned, Dracula has risen from the grave. I like the atheist hero in that. Like, I think as far as non-Van Helsing heroes of Hammer movies, I think he's one of the more interesting ones.
Right, and it feels like you're just kind of going, okay, like as I was saying to Jason when we were watching the movie, okay, I'll call you Jonathan. I don't care if your name is Paul. I'm calling you Jonathan. I'm going to call you Lucy or maybe Mina. Like, I was like, it's just kind of like, let's keep that story going, but have it be with different names.
Yeah,
so I feel like just the remake.
I agree with you, or at least like everybody fills the roles that they have.
Yeah, exactly.
It feels sequel-y in ways, like it treads that sequel remake line that we sometimes see with TV stuff
and reboot. Tony, that's the other
thing.
Yeah,
that's what
this
was
written also to they completely jettison whatever continuity so called. I mean, it was always loose, but they jettison any continuity they had before and essentially just hit the reset button. on Dracula in this movie.
Right. And then also, I mean, this is not why it's not necessarily good, but it's something that troubles me, is this business of, at the very beginning, if I may start us at the beginning.
Yeah.
So you have the Dracula's resurrection, which, by the way, is the footage from Dracula's death in Taste the Blood of Dracula, but played in reverse. Yeah.
What?
Apparently, that's what the IMDb tells me.
Okay, we will check on that.
I know, right? I do
like
not
the
know
vampire bat resurrecting him though.
Yeah.
No, but I was going to say that.
Julia,
What I was going to
explain
say
this
is,
to us. What happens?
yeah, but what I was going to say is this: what I always say about the MCU or any other movie or franchise where there are shapeshifters, and like you can never trust anybody in a world where shapeshifters exist. You can't. Here, it's like you can never believe that Dracula's dead if freaking bats can just come along and give him some blood, and now he comes back again. It's like that's you will never be dead ever. Like there's literally no way.
That's not an uncommon thing among horror movie villains, in fairness.
True.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so that's the thing. So this one, it just kind of threw. And like I say, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it kind of threw a wrench in the in what I considered to be sort of like, okay, so Dracula's dead now, and we can kind of dismiss with that. And then, of course, some other way he'll come. But if he can always come back just by feeding him some blood, then there's no point. Like you should take and what now. I'm wondering what the rules are. Like if you poured his ashes into the ocean, do they like just pull together across the ocean? If you took some ashes to one side of the earth and some ashes to the other, would they find their way back together? Does he even need all the ashes? Does he just need a few of the ashes?
You should totally write that. The notion that so let me just recap how he came back in previous movies. There was one. So in Dracula, Prince of Darkness, at the end, he went into the ice. And then in the next movie, a corrupt priest bonked his head, and the blood flowed down the river to where Dracula's frozen corpse was and brought him back. Prior to that,
but it's a corpse; it's not just ashes.
Yeah, but prior to that, Dracula, if I recall, had been ashes and clove, same name, different clove, but still more or less the same guy.
Why not just call him Renfield?
I don't know.
I don't understand.
But in the Hammer universe, he's called Clove.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, Clove grabs somebody, he hauls them up, he cuts their throat, blood flows down, instant Dracula. That's how it happens.
I love the idea of
Carnation,
some kind of like box something called instant Dracula. I mean, eat your instant Dracula. Don't let it sit too long in the pantry.
Oh man,
we got a whole stack of instant Dracula back here that hasn't sold at all. But you know what? It made me think too, because the village gets fed up with Dracula at the beginning, right?
Yes.
And they burn down the castle. But at first I was kind of hoping actually there was powder kegs.
Yeah.
And because I also wonder if you obliterated Dracula with powder kegs, it seems like a thing that you should try at least. Somebody should try at least once.
Yes.
Like, would that reform? Because I mean, the traditional idea is you put the stake in the heart, you cut off the head, you burn both parts, you throw those ashes in the river. And that's supposed to like that.
Nope.
That basically gets rid of.
In some variations, Tony, I have read though that while you're burning the body, you need a bunch of servants around with hose, because the body may turn into like slithering vermin that you will also need to kill each of those guys that tries to slither away.
That's great. Like the implement, right? And not like inner city hose, right?
Right.
I mean, I guess, it depends on which Dracula you're writing, I suppose. Are you writing?
No, you need to whack it with garden tools. Yes.
Right.
But yeah, all these little snakes and lizards and things are gonna crawl out of the fire, and you got to get those because.
Well, the idea would be to put those, like, burn the ashes in the container.
Yes, it's sort of remarkable how difficult it is to kill this guy. But to Julia's
I want to get into that later, because I have thoughts about that whole thing and why this Dracula is kind of interesting in some ways.
Okay, but yes, as you said, they get fed up with him. They burn they burn his castle because Dracula. So we open with Dracula
which
dead.
Is funny because what they actually do is basically burn all of Clove's crap.
Yeah.
Right, because the castle's made of stone. It's not going to burn that easily.
Well, also Dracula's, they say like, hey, look, if you're burning all this crap, like you're just going to be burning all the stuff.
Right.
Clove is telling him like you're not burning Dracula, which is true. His room does not, like his coffin is safe. And so basically, I mean, to be honest, there's all the historical Dracula family heirlooms that get burned. And some of those, I guess, didn't get burned, evidently, because we come back to it. But, Clove's kind of right. It's like, you're burning my house down. I live here. Dracula doesn't give a crap about all the stuff in his castle. Thanks for just burning all of my junk.
Well, he gives enough of a crap that he murders all the women in the village.
No, of course. That's
pretty horribly, I might add.
That's the second part. Is Dracula goes just to prove A, you didn't take me out, and B, I am now just extremely sick of this village. Like I let you live, and you're in thrall, and sometimes I feed on you, but this is beyond the pale. And now everyone, not only that, but he sends the bats, because they're the bats and they can do his bidding, to a church to kill them all.
Yes.
So right. He's like, I can't enter the church, but my bats can, and now everybody's dead. So
but I believe, because this is spoilers for the end. I believe that the thing that happens at the end is punishment for that. I really think that.
I think we're kind of in sync.
Yeah, I think that God's like, no, we were fine as long as you were just taking out people that weren't my people, but you go into my house and take out my people. We have a problem.
When we get to the end, I had some thoughts on that because I found it kind of fascinating, but I'm kind of with you on that, or at least something, along those lines. But I was really like, it starts. I mean, this starts in fact, the movie only builds back up to this in a few places, because the beginning is just so like, you have a village and the villagers have had enough, and then Dracula just goes, nope. That's it, man. You should not, because they come back like, phew, man, that was a hard day's work of killing some Draculas. Oh Lord.
Our women and children are going to be so happy, or I guess there's no children, but our women are going to be so happy to hear that we've killed Dracula.
Yeah, nobody expects mutant bats, and I think the bats are the one. And on that note, I think part of it also, and part of people's reticence, is how the concept and what they're trying to push with these bats is supposed to be so much more terrifying than what we see on screen. Yeah. Just due to budgetary restrictions. Because like when it's being attacked later, so they slaughter a whole village's worth of women and children in a church, which is horrific. And the gore is pretty fantastic there too. Like,
no, it's so gory, this movie.
It's gross.
So much red. What is it, Jason?
Tempera paint. But the people with their eyes gouged out and stuff, that's all pretty good. That looks pretty good.
Well, and maybe that's one of the reasons why I don't like this film so much. Not into the gory things, as you know.
But in reality,
I do think though, when people say that Hammer, you often hear about how like Hammer is very gory. I always feel like the majority of what people are remembering is, and I mean, I know to a degree it's also partly because the originals were in color and we weren't used to seeing these characters in color at that point. But I think people are thinking about like the latter movies a lot of the time as well.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, especially when you consider that even after this movie, there's still like, how many do you have to go after this? You got 1, 2, 3 more Dracula movies alone, and you've also so they're not done by a long shot. So it's there's a lot more stuff to put in the memory bank for people.
Yeah, but I think the bats in general, just it was hard to execute them well because they're supposed to be pretty frightening and violent, but in reality, looking at how they move in the movie, you want to go like, just put the blanket over your head, invert the blanket around the bat, make it a sack, and just whale that thing into as much stonework as you can, and problem solved. Like in reality, that would be what you could do because they're kind of slow moving. But what we're supposed to, I think what we're supposed to see is a demonic force of nature that you cannot fight off.
Right.
But the reality of what we see is something that looks like you could pretty easily just like not expose your face to it, wrap it in a towel, and just whip that thing like
well, but that's
into
also
a fire or whatever, right? Like, but it is supposed to be this hell beast, and when we see them the first time, we certainly get that impression. Like, these things tore through a village full of people, which is more than almost anything I've seen. Like, I don't think I've seen like a pack of wolves do that at the behest of Dracula.
No.
So the fact that it's beasts, these hell bats, that's kind of a cool concept that I don't think anybody's ever really reused.
And I wish they would. I mean, one of the things that strikes me when I, about 20 years ago, I was writing a Dracula miniseries, right? And I remember trying to think, what are some powers that we haven't seen in a while? And we never used this one, but this is a great power. He's got several powers in here. Dracula. Let's just talk about Christopher Lee as Dracula. Both his powers, but also just Christopher Lee walking around. So powers-wise, what does he have? He has his usual sort of voodoo where he can
control bats.
Yeah. Well, he has his usual thing where he can hypnotize and make docile women, and he's
just everybody though. I mean, that he's super powered in that respect. His hypnotism powers and suggestion powers are way stronger.
Yes. He's also
he doesn't even have to have his eyes open.
Yeah, he's just like,
he doesn't even have to be awake. That's the other. So that's a new power he's got here.
Yeah, the thing where he's got like red psychic eyes when he's asleep.
To keep you from staking him.
That was a bit much for me. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know why that bugged me, but like I was like, I don't know, like the way they visualized it. I don't know why I wasn't bothered by the mechanical bats at all, because like older vampire movies, they have mechanical bats and they don't always look great.
I don't think I have a problem. It's just what we see is not like, they're so horrifying and rip through people that the dichotomy of that.
The optical effects though of the burning eyes, like, really is goofy to me. Like, I get what they were trying to do, but like I don't know. Like,
maybe I'm too easy on this, but I was fine. I loved it. So there's that. But so setting aside what it looks like, and I was fine with what it looked like. But setting aside what it looks like, the concept that guys can be setting fire to Dracula's house, and in his sleep he can like sick bats on the church of the village. In his sleep he can do this stuff when he's not even fully conscious. That's amazing.
This is super villain Dracula.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he is so extremely powerful in this one.
Yes.
That, I mean, nothing.
It's sort of remarkable that they win, and spoilers for the end, they win more or less because I think Julia's right. I think that God decides that.
Nature, and that's something I was gonna. I mean, since we're spoiling it now, what I viewed is he was not going to lose. It took the force of nature or God or what. Humans were not, at no point until there was some form of divine intervention in the form of lightning were any of these people going to defeat this Dracula. It was proven. I mean, he was just taking no BS, he's ripping through everyone, hypnotizing the people. I mean, hypnotizing people from behind. No one could touch him. When every time they think they can attempt to try to harm him, he's either hypnotized someone else or the bats to stop them. Like, at no point is anybody have a chance. And it's kind of Deus Ex Machina kind of ending, but it took some form of natural or divine intervention to even partially stop this Dracula, which is crazy.
So you've hit on something here though, Tony. Perhaps this is why critics aren't the kindest to this movie, because it does make, like, the heroes are already kind of ineffectual and passive. Right. And then like, their presence ultimately does thing. And it didn't bother me, but like, I'm trying to look at this as why this movie has such a negative reputation. And I do think if somebody were to say this is why I don't like it, I would say, well, that is a fair criticism.
Sure.
I mean, I just keep thinking, I'm looking right now at the scenes where it's Sarah and Simon. Sarah and Simon are going into the little bar, where Michael Ripper works, and, asking, hey, have you seen my brother Paul? And the look of this thing, there is literally nothing here that is different from similar scenes in like Vampire Lovers or any of the other Hammer films of this era. This is just what they look like. I mean, in other words, this one gets picked on weirdly, considering this is just what.
But Vampire Lovers does have a better script than this.
Yeah,
Vampire
but the
Lovers
look
has a
of
very
it,
interesting
like
script. Yes.
this to me, I don't think that this looks like any more telenovela than anything. Like, I think that criticism, what you're hitting on, Jason, is the look of it. I don't think it looks necessarily cheaper. It is lower budget. It does look, there's more there's more production value in some other Hammer movies, but I don't think this is abysmal. We've seen super low budget.
Oh goodness!
Like, you and I have seen, probably everybody on here has seen amazingly low budget things that look cheap.
Yes,
and sometimes big budget things that look cheap. Right?
This still first of all, it's being filmed at Elstree Studios at these great sets that Hammer's going to use over and over and over again for this last several years. I once again, by the way, I want to, in the same scene where they're walking into the bar, and I want to comment on several things going on here. Number one, this village, I haven't said this word in like 5 years on this show, but the concept of the Hammerscape is never more real than in this damn movie, where just everything from the color, the fact that everybody in the village hangs out in the same little bar, a pub, like all day and night. They're there for every meal, so all plot points can travel through. It's weirdly German. There's the burgomaster is sending his guys because Christopher Matthews as Paul is this magical pianist man who everybody throws themselves at. And so like, seriously, the character like walks into, anytime he sees a woman, they're like, "Oh, come up to my room."
Yeah, he's got the Dracula power of like hypnosis.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will have to give it up for this movie, even though it's not the main character. There are many more Hammer brunettes, which used to, give me all the gothy brunettes.
All the women are wearing what we associate with, even if it's not quite true until about this era. To Drew's point, what people remember about Hammer glamour is the Hammer, bustiers, basically, and you see a lot of them in this movie.
There is a lot. I mean, especially
the Hammer décolleté.
It's a very boobalicious movie.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, to the point where like the bat comes by to take the cross, and like, well,
scratchy,
a little bit more bat cross here, a little bit more bat. Oh no, the bat is struggling. A little bit more. Like, struggle a little bit more with the bat. Okay, we got it. I think reshoot. Oh, a little bit more bat. So, it does have that, but I mean, it's still pretty chaste compared to a lot of other movies.
But
and
it's when people are talking about these movies, they're always talking about them within the context of the time. And Hammer seems, because like Hammer,
I mean, it is lurid.
It is lurid. Yeah, but Jason, you might want to close your ears because I might say something that's blasphemous to you.
It's fine.
But Hammer is rooted in Universal, and in some ways it's an inversion of Universal in that they're gorier and they're naughtier, but like you also like the angry villagers, the burgomaster, the buffoonish burgomaster, like all that stuff. So it's like it's both subversion of what came before, but also it's also still in that tradition. And so when I think people are thinking about these movies, well, thank you.
It's not blasphemy at all. Is my point. This is really good. This is good stuff. Yeah, continue.
I think that when people are thinking though about the reactions to these movies, they're always like the contemporary reactions, because I think if you were to show someone that was brought up on contemporary horror, these would be quite chased by maybe not Vampire Lovers, but or Countess Dracula or something like that, but this certainly is not nearly as sleazy as a lot of stuff that comes after.
Outside of during its time in 1970, though, I mean, we do have to say that at the beginning, there is a woman running around naked, and just nightgown covering her front, but she's running around. I mean, that's probably
so infuriating. I hated that scene.
No, I mean,
did you hate it because of its Benny Hill-ness? Is that
Yes, totally.
just like
It was so absurd. I mean, the woman is like, she's the daughter of the burgermeister, whatever he's called.
you're thinking of Burgermeister Meisterburger from
this guy
what is it? The Year Without
a Year
Claus?
Without a Santa Claus.
Yes,
that guy.
Yes.
So his daughter. Yeah, it makes it a whole different kind of story if you think about that guy's being the father. But anyway,
oh, man.
the burgermaster's daughter is she's in bed with him, and she's like super petty and jealous and like, possessive, and it's just a kind of an idiot character, really irritating. Walking, like you say, running around nude for no reason, like very Benny Hillish. With
Not
sticking her-
no reasons. They did just do.
No, but she didn't have to leave the room. She could have like just, the point is, it's for no reason.
I've
chasing him through
picked
the
up
house.
delivery food buck ass naked after, post fooling around a few times. So like
It's an
I didn't
infuriating
find it-
scene.
I
Especially
didn't
because
find it unrealistic.
She sticks the father's guards on him. I mean, it's just just because
Julia,
she thinks he might be with a girl.
The problem
It
might
just
be
made me
that
mad.
Kira, the female character, is perhaps a tad underwritten, and
She's overwritten to be super irritating.
I mean,
I don't know. I just
it's
hated
basically
her.
this is Benny Hill crap. This is
It
totally
super is.
Also, with her dad going,
Yeah,
come here,
exactly.
young
Like,
lady.
I'm
Oh,
surprised
gosh.
he didn't throw him in prison or something.
I
Anyway,
see it.
yeah.
Well, he would. He it was not for lack of trying.
He does
Right.
send the gendarme after Paul. It's just that
Well.
Paul ends up running into Dracula.
Mhm.
So
I
but-
kept. I think that the burgermaster stuff is basically just an excuse for him to leave town. Like it's not
that and excuse to have some nudity. Come on.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
admittedly,
yes.
though, this is not what's the one this isn't Satanic Rites of Dracula. There's no full frontal
Right.
nudity. There's no nipples.
Right.
This is we're talking about a bare behind. That is the extent of the nudity in this movie. Just so people have an understanding of, if you haven't seen it, that's why I keep calling it Benny Hill. It's about that's about as far as this goes. It is stupid, and it is definitely I think fair to say misogynist in the way that only pop culture of 1970 could be, but it's not super nude. I just don't want to get people's hopes up.
Super nude.
Get
Yes.
anyone's hopes up. My
The-
God.
So-
super nude. I don't know why that's so funny.
But
to
anyway,
me.
this is the Hammer world where everybody's got Cockney accents if they're one class, and sort of professional accents if they're another, and everybody's British, and everybody uses German titles, and it's all in kind of a Germany kind of place, and yeah, it has zero to do with reality. That's the amazing thing.
It is a non-place.
Yeah, where the hell? What year is this? Who knows?
That is a really good question, because I think that the costumes even look like from different. Like some of the costumes look Edwardian, and then like some of the costumes look almost colonial.
medieval.
1970?
Yeah. Well, the hairstyles are definitely 1970.
I know. I told Jason, I'm like, Paul looks like he's just time traveled from the Monkeys show.
Yeah, the good-looking men all have these sort of mop tops. This very modern kind of look. Everybody's wearing wigs, by the way. Everyone is wearing a wig, including Dracula, of course. He's back to his usual Dracula wig and everything. Everyone. I love the way that this world works. And I kind of feel like this movie, even if it has a slightly weak script, somehow all of those elements are there, as though they were sort of touching bases as they went.
I haven't looked it up, but I was wondering if Simon in this was the impetus for Simon Belmont in Castlevania. Like, did Simon? I'm sure it's been chronicled, but I just clicked in my head as I was watching. I was like, huh? Is Simon This Simon, or some offshoot of this Simon? Is that the homage? I guess.
Very
But
maybe. I mean,
I have to look it up again. I'm
did
sure
it
I
strike
could
you?
find it.
Did it strike you as strange that this is one of the few movies I can think of where, I mean, like City of what is it? City of the Dead is one. This is one. Psycho is one, where we kind of feel like we're following the main character, and then they get iced. I mean,
we don't even see him get iced. We see he like disappears until we find his corpse later in the movie.
Yes, I know. And although that is directly, in a sense, that is directly borrowed from Horror of Dracula, where
Well, and
they
then what
happen
is
to
it like
harken.
Friday the 13th that borrows from this?
In
with
what
the
way?
guy on the hook, whichever it is, I don't know.
Right.
Oh,
I
whatever.
think it's also kind of almost more of a nod to the original Dracula, where you follow Jonathan and then kind of he's
Yeah.
away for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, this it turns out permanent, but I think it follows some of those beats.
That's a
in
very
a
good
way
point.
that's like a remake. He's encountering there's brides, but there's not really. There's a bride that's
There's a
sort of
bride.
also meet.
Don't you find it fascinating, by the way, everybody in this movie who works for Dracula is out to betray Dracula?
That's a nod though, like that's a nod to Renfield.
Yeah,
that's true. Yes, like
Well,
Clove.
and in his whatever, what did you say his name is? Clove.
Yes.
Yeah, he it's just he's in love with the picture of the girl.
I
can't kill her. She's pretty.
The creepiest thing in this whole movie is the scene where Clove goes in to the bedroom and he first discovers the picture and he's dismembering the body of the vampire girl and he puts the picture in such a way that he can kind of look at it lovingly while he's chopping up this body and putting it in acid. And that's like some Jeffrey Dahmer shit right there. Like that's
it's very clever,
creepy.
And I mean, although as we're thinking through this, like the disappearance of Paul and that vampire girl being there, that is a complete replay of the 1957 Horror of Dracula, because that's exactly what happens to Jonathan. There's the girl, Dracula shows up. We're also back. So now the more I think of it, as we're walking through this, much of this appears to be that the screenwriter has just simply taken the first movie and taken whole sections of it and just gone, what if we just do that again? Because look at like how Dracula himself is back in this movie to being, when he's faced with people and he's not revealing his whole monster self, how like totally slick he's back to being.
He's like vampire Hugh Hefner in this.
Yes,
like he's so.
But not only that, but one of the differences in this is every time he bites a woman, it's almost orgasmic in the way that they react. Eventually,
no, for sure, you're right.
I mean, but eventually it turns to kind of there's a shift where it does look painful. But when he starts, it's always like this looks like he really is out. Like they're enjoying the initial bite.
I think
That's
they're
the way
kind
he
of
works
into
here.
it. Yeah, no, seriously. And
for
I think
sure.
a lot of people who fantasize about Christopher Lee's Dracula, I think they're getting it from a lot of these movies. This one,
we should have had Mary Chalman on.
Yeah, we could ask her, because you go straight to the horse's mouth, because I can only conjecture myself. But I mean, we're also back to that Horror of Dracula difference between the super slick, super suave, Drew, you said Hugh Hefner, here have some claret kind of Dracula, and then later when he does his freak out thing, he's especially vicious, and that's the other thing. A lot of the critics really hated the fact that when he bursts in to abuse his vampire bride for taking Paul for herself, he stabs her to death with a knife.
So
I must admit, violent.
I must admit, I am a bit perplexed by that, because she appears to be a vampire, and stabbing her in the stomach repeatedly shouldn't kill her.
Yeah.
I don't think she's.
I guess that's true.
Full vampire yet, because she's still able to go outside during.
She had the fangs and stuff.
Yeah, but she's still able to go outside during the daylight and stuff.
Was she? Did she? I don't remember.
Yeah, it seemed like,
I think she did.
Okay, well, maybe she's who knows? I mean, so we might be able to explain. We can probably no prize our way to Dracula being able to kill a vampire with a knife. And then what I thought was strange is I see over and over again critics point out, and then most disgusting of all, Dracula bends down and drinks from her body.
That's
from
just
her
Dracula.
wound. Yeah. Well, yeah,
just Dracula being
most
Dracula.
disgusting of all, Dracula does Dracula.
Is that he's a vampire.
That he would drink from her stomach wounds, which apparently people find particularly nauseating. But to be honest with you, if that happens, it happens off screen. There's not a moment in here where you see Christopher Lee.
No, you just see that
he bends forward, he bends back
now,
up, right?
Which is a freaking Dracula thing. That's what he does.
I'm just saying, for some weird reason, in 2 years after Rosemary's Baby and in the year of Count Yorga, the critics became particularly weirdly prudish about Scars of Dracula, which I just find very odd, and that's a thing that happened. So yes.
Well, were people? I think that the comparison must were people off put by Yorga, put by Rosemary Baby? Are there similar criticisms? Would
people
be able to compare?
Everybody knew, even in 1968, to the man, everybody was like, Rosemary's Baby changes the way horror is. This is amazing. Horror is all going to be about big amazing apartment complexes from now on. Everything, Roman Polanski is where it's at. So everybody was on that bandwagon. But there were still a lot of Gothic horrors to come for 3 or 4 years. But this sort of increasingly was a track that was leading nowhere. Whereas the track of, Rosemary's Baby, and then of course The Exorcist in 1973 and The Omen in 1976, that's where culture was going. So this was the old road, and nobody was going there anymore. And so I liken it to Paul McCartney. The fact that Paul McCartney, to a lot of rock critics' great disappointment, did not die when the Beatles ended. So he just remained writing music and releasing it, and nobody knew what the hell to do with that. And I feel like it's sort of like that. I'm sorry, I've been ranting. I thought
no, you've been laying the thesis.
Yes. So what happens next? Of course, Simon and Sarah, who are the lovers, go looking for, and the closest to a Father Shandor or Van Helsing is this priest. He's not near. You're exactly right. There's
so
no
weak though.
Yeah,
oh man, is he just?
Yeah, there's not much to him. He's fine, but he gets killed by the bat. He's and so really the movie wraps up pretty quickly because Simon eventually goes back to Dracula after he's not able to rouse any help except for from the priest. Sarah ends up being
well, I mean, to be fair, he didn't offer to pay anybody. I feel like he should have been like,
yeah,
I will pay you to come back and help me.
Right.
Yeah.
These guys,
well, these villagers have just sort of resigned.
Well, also, by the way, their whole, let's not forget, anything that they do is being monitored by at least one, if not a flock of mutant vampire bats. Tear you to pieces bats. Because they're spies too. That's what's kind of interesting and cool. Because the bats just kind of hover around. They're like the drones in Half-Life.
Yeah, you're right.
There's just bats everywhere, possibly, because there's a bunch of them in the beginning. We only see one throughout the rest of the movie. But anytime that you're around, there just might be a bat ready to rip your face off, or rip at your cleavage for a cross or something, but they're all gonna report back to Dracula if anything's amiss, and that's pretty terrifying. We don't go into that as much, but that's the reality of
you're
what
exactly
they've
right.
set up, which is that's why the priest fights it.
Hey. Yeah, and none of the others. Dracula has completely cowed this village. I love the moment when Simon makes it back to Dracula's crypt, which, as Tony explained, Dracula's own crypt is almost impossible to reach. Unless you're Dracula, and it's you can only get to it through this window on the side of a cliff.
What is weird though is that the window's always open, like sunlight.
Yeah,
that's they don't go into very much about, hey, he's affected by sunlight. It seems
Yeah.
to be secondary.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think he's that affected by it. I think he basically sleeps in the daytime, but I don't think that it would. I think he could.
But his
Yeah, but
window
he
was
was able to
constantly open,
sleep.
like there were no shutters on it.
Yeah, yeah.
Also,
You're exactly
this
right.
has kind of bugged me, and I know that this is one of those dumb things that bugs me.
Yes.
When is it Paul, right? He's the original Lothario
Yeah,
guy,
the one who
right?
dies is Paul. Yeah.
When he is going down to go check out Dracula, like try to escape, he gets these huge. He gets all the drapes together.
Yeah.
And they're these huge velvet drapes. And
Yes.
I go, I'm just, in my head, I'm thinking, there's no way those knots, those velvety large knots.
Yes.
That he's tying them together with are not going to send him plummeting to his death. Like,
Yeah.
if you ever tried to tie things together, velvety drapes,
it has to be,
as a material,
yeah,
are not going to work at all.
Yeah.
And I'm watching him do this, going, that's a bad, like, rip him in half, something, give him some. And I know that's a really stupid thing to pick up on. But I was watching it, I just go like, oh.
He used square nuts, and so I just took it
Sorta,
for granted.
but that's not the fabric. I know this is dumb. This is not something I should really worry about. But as I'm watching it, it just made me just irrationally like, man, come on, this is not going to work. Or when they do the rope later on, I'm like, tie knots into the rope so you can help yourself there, people, adventurers.
Yeah, because the people do in this movie spend an awful lot of time rappelling from the window of the bedchamber where Dracula's guests tend to live to the window of Dracula's own crypt.
Which it's interesting too, because that's a great way of doing things because it's shut off from the outside.
Yes.
There's only one way to get into it. And Dracula, because he's cool about climbing up and down his castle. Oh, that's the other thing I think people pick up on. If you watch really close, this quote unquote stonework is very pliable.
Oh.
If you watch it again, Jason, watch the part where he's hanging by the rope and Cloves comes back and goes, "Ha ha, tricked you."
Yes.
When he's leaning up against the stone, it is.
Is it spongy? Is it
it's like the it looks better, of course, right? It's a better quality, but it moves like the kind of fake castle stuff you can put up on the side of your house at the like during Halloween, or if you want to turn your house into a fake plastic castle.
Oh yeah, okay.
It moves like that. And I was like, oh no, that's not something I've noticed in past Hammer movies. But again, there's a difference between laughing at it and going, ha, look, oh, it's stone, huh? And just going, wow, that's a lower budget choice. I wonder why that happened, considering things are so much higher. And I think these are the kinds of things that critics are picking up on as they're watching it. And if nothing else, it's because what they're really reacting to is when you set the bar pretty high and you go lower than that, well, everything is just that much more noticeable. We see it all the time in VFX. Like if you have a ton of amazing VFX shots and then one of them's not as good, even if it was not, it would look great in another movie because it's that VFX shot. It looks crummier. It happens in video games too, one area that doesn't look as good, oh, that level sucks or whatever. So seeing that was like, oh wow, that's odd. That I mean
that's true. That. And yet at the same time, I have to say that the other set for the castle when they're outside on the battlements is a neat
great
set. Man,
but again, that's the difference. Is if you have the stuff that looks really good, the stuff that doesn't look as good is going to look twice as bad. Not because it's the worst, but because once you set the bar, everything else kind of has to follow that, or else. Again, I don't mind. And like I said, I talked to, when I'm hearing all the criticisms, I'm like, sign me up for this movie. Just sight unseen. This sounds great.
Yeah.
But to people who are criticizing it, that's part of what they're picking up on.
Yeah. I think that's fair. That makes total sense. So they do basically we get to this final confrontation where Clove finally frustrates Dracula enough that Dracula throws him over the side, leaving Dracula, by the way, with no more servants because he has already killed.
Jason was like, "What? Where? Why does he only have one servant?" I'm like, "Because he keeps killing them.
Right?
Anytime he has a servant, he either eats them, or kills them because they don't. Whatever.
They frustrate him."
Well,
Dracula.
he does take his time working up to killing Clove. Like
that's true. He tortures the shit out of Clove too. I mean,
Poor
it's
guy.
pretty
like
awful.
I mean, I know he's horrible, but
I'm
still.
like Clove is a conflicted character,
Mhm.
and he's a tormented character, so that warrants a little bit of empathy. However, from Dracula's perspective, when he finally does kill him, like if I was Dracula, I would do it too, because he can't make up his mind to which side he's on.
Yes. Yeah, it's remarkable. Dracula finally faces off against Simon, which is Dennis Waterman in an early young role here, just as a sort of youth, honestly not all that interesting. Dennis Waterman became famous for playing, gangsters and other kind of folks when he was older, and he finally we lost Dennis Waterman in May of this year. But here he's young, he's facing Dracula, and he's way outmatched. He grabs a big iron spike and throws it at Dracula, and it just sort of goes right into Dracula's body, and Dracula's like, whatever, and pulls.
I thought for sure he was going to turn around and impale him right
He
back.
was about to. He was absolutely about to throw it through Paul. I mean, through Simon, absolutely. And because even if it had gone in his heart, it's not made of wood. I don't think this would have killed Dracula no matter what. It's just the most pathetic.
Sure.
It's nothing. He holds it up.
That's the thing is he is there. He is ready to rip just everything apart.
Yeah.
Like nothing. There's nothing that with his legion of bats and inability, and even when people try, like, hey, I'm right here. I'm in the daylight with a stake, and he can still go, no, I don't think you want to do that. Well, I think I'm going. Well, these laser eyes say, nope, can't stake me. He catches an iron rod.
Yes.
Which was meant for him, and he's hypnotizing everybody around him.
Yeah.
Without nature or divine intervention, this Dracula, and that's why I said, Pounce's Dracula and Yorga, who are just ready to run through things, choke things, rip them apart. This Dracula is up there, surpasses them in supernatural ability.
Yeah, that's true. That's
it
absolutely
is
right. Yeah.
By the grace of God, or whatever force you want to call it.
I think in this one, which is a Christian, this one uses Christian terminology, so it sure seems like God whacks him with lightning.
He sure does scream and set on fire pretty well, though.
You have to take it on what they show you in this is a Judeo-Christian universe.
Of course.
That's the rules.
I think it looks great when he sets on fire.
Happens because he's not even really. He's got so many ways of not being around a cross. He's abhorrent, but he never burns. It never burns into him. It never harms him or sets him on fire.
Although that teeny tiny cross does send him for powerful as he is. Like the teeny tiny cross does. Like this is just a few years away of Frank Langella laughing off the Holy Cross.
Yeah, that's true.
So that is a difference here.
Yeah, and Langella as well with his all the heavy Draculas. This guy is as heavy. This portrayal of Dracula is as heavy, but with extra supernatural power.
Yeah.
And he's pretty much an unstoppable force. And when I say either nature or a wrath, I just mean that it happens through a lightning bolt.
It's a lightning bolt. Yeah.
You want to go.
They were very lucky. This wasn't a.
Yeah. If they wouldn't been fighting during a storm, that's it for everyone. Because he's going to go. Well, the villagers let this happen, so it's time for Bat Army. Let's
what's going to happen?
Examples.
I mean, Dracula here catches fire, screaming and falls over the cliff, burning all the way down until he hits the bottom. So his crispy body is going to lay there, probably not completely burnt, until one of his damn bats comes by and just
keeps up some more blood.
It's 5 minutes from now. They don't. It's not going to last long.
But the important thing is that our couple will have gotten the fuck out of Dodge by this.
Yes, right. We hope. If
I don't know. Those bats are fast.
Yeah. No, I think in the way that horror movies work, it'll be at least 6 months or so before he gets.
What we could
but does Dracula because okay, in the 80s, if you survived a Friday the 13th movie, but you showed up in the next one, you were going to get killed by Jason. Like
Yes, sure.
those were the rules. Like you shouldn't have come back. Hammer movies, with the exception of Peter Cushing, never revisit their heroes.
That's correct. Well, that's not. Wait, that's not. There is a difference. In the two movies that come after this, which are the ones that take place in the 1970s, there you have Peter Cushing and his granddaughter are both recurring characters.
Yeah, but although she is played by two different actresses.
That is correct. Yes. Yeah. Excellent use of Hammer trivia out there.
If
Joanna Lumley was one of them. I think I can't remember.
Oh yeah, and she's gorgeous.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I just was thinking the villagers are smart. They're gonna take the time to go, okay, so they're not being controlled by Dracula right now. Can we just have a bat patrol?
Purge the bats.
Purge all, like we gotta take matters in our own hand. Quick, while he's not being resurrected, can we take out all the bats? Although they might just go, it's time for everyone to mass exodus this village because screw it.
Yeah, right? Like why don't they just leave?
Well, it's not, socioeconomics is just the same as when everybody else goes, why don't you just leave? It's like, do you have the money to rent or buy or whatever in another place? Just out of
I feel bad for the waitress character.
Yeah.
Who is like just completely ignorant of everything that's going on in this town.
Yeah, it's true.
No, she's that was tragic. Getting dark. Like seriously, the second she leaves, she's like, well, I guess she didn't believe it though, because even when they tell her, "Look, this is really bad," she's like, that's why I hear the rumors, but
but in fairness, like to her, that would seem insane if you were, or people in horror movies don't know that they're in horror movies, or otherwise the movies wouldn't work because she would have left during the day. But in real life, she would be correct and would not be in any danger because these villagers would be insane. But I don't know. I just feel so bad. Like more than anybody else, even worse than Clove, who is at least complicit in his murderous actions. Like I feel really bad because this girl tries to do the right thing multiple times.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
The brunettes all get it in this. The gothy brunettes just are fodder in this movie, sadly.
I feel like if you wanted to do, like, if I were writing another like Rock'em Sock'em sort of Dracula kind of thing, what you would want to do, and it could happen in this universe, you could, if you had a Dracula this powerful, everybody would need to get way more organized. So you'd have to have like a Van Helsing who was like under the auspices of the prince maybe, and like had a lot of people involved and could clear out this entire village, get everybody moved to somewhere else, and then just start working on figuring out high tech for the 18th century means of getting Dracula out of there.
Well, what if they had done like a crossover with Captain Kronos eventually or something?
Absolutely. Kronos maybe could figure out. You got to start with a notion of how powerful this Dracula is, which nobody here does. You have to go. You have to like have a big chalkboard where they're just explaining. All right, hypnosis, mutant bats.
Well, you just have to go like, look, there's no way even even an army of humans, like we've already seen a whole village burn it down who came back to all of their women and children slaughtered, or most of them, if not all. So look, maybe cannons will work, right? Like you'd have to have them go like, you can't send, people aren't going to work without really figuring this out. And even then we don't know yet. So we're going to have to do something different.
Right. It's going to have to involve a stake. Stake through the heart is still a thing. But then you're going to have to make sure that, this has to be like Mission Impossible, because they got to do the stake, but they're also
a trebuchet full of stakes.
Yes.
Just keep shelling the,
and then when he's ashes, they're going to have to deal with the ashes. They're just going to have to keep doing one thing after another until they've got it taken care of. That kind of thing never happens. By the way, the next movie, Dracula 80, 1972, I'm not so crazy about it after its opening credits, but the opening, just like with this movie, the opening
is the opening is great in that film, actually. I remember that because I watched it a few times, but
yeah.
What would be interesting is to have a Kronos Van Helsing kind of character who has had to figure this out. Look, first time I staked him, I followed all the rules. Guess what? He came back. So I did this and this, and then I did this and this. Like, man, you kind of suck at your job. He's like, no, he's Dracula. Like, I don't.
Yeah, this
I
isn't some
can't
garden
like.
variety vampire that just is hanging out in Kleinenberg and
Yeah, he's
no.
like, I don't suck at my job. Like any of these things should have worked, and I'm constantly researching to try to stay a step ahead. It would be interesting to see it kind of, weathered. I hope it works this time, but I'm not going to tell you it is, because these dozen other times I did everything in the books.
Yeah.
So damn it, you gotta trust me on this. Kind of look, that would be pretty amazing.
I feel like we should also mention, by the way, I was just looking here at the opening credits of Scars of Dracula, and the title Scars of Dracula, which lays across the screen, is also disturbingly unimpressive looking. It really looks like a last minute creation of it. Doesn't look good. It doesn't look like an artist laid it out. It looks pitiful, which is just very weird. So basically, we've got a study in contrast with this movie. Some sets are great, some are not so great. Some of the some of it is really scary, some of it seems silly, some of it seems like a Benny Hill sketch. It is all over the place. I probably won't have a final thought beyond this, that it's still one of my favorite Dracula films. Let's get to our final thoughts, in fact. We will start with Mr. Drew. Drew!
You didn't start with me.
Didn't I? Oh!
You started with Tony, then Julia.
No,
you actually started with
me. It was
me.
Julia, Tony, Drew, Jason.
Oh, see, there you go.
But it doesn't matter.
I'm sorry. I was looking at last week's order. Okay, so it's Julia. Julia, final thoughts. Scars of Dracula.
Yeah. I think that having talked about it, it brought back. Literally, we watched this movie yesterday, so the fact that I already forgot things was not a good sign. But it brought back stuff that I had already forgotten, but not necessarily good things, because, like I say, the whole Benny Hill thing, like we talked about, the all the goriness. Some of the just silliness of the script. Those are the things that I didn't love. But there is some a few interesting elements to it. The whole thing with God smiting him, even though it's not permanent, but whatever. The thing with the poor Clove, and his being kind of a what's the Stockholm syndrome kind of thing, where he's like, he kind of worships the master, but also is abused by him, and then turns on him pretty quickly whenever he finds a pretty girl. All that, there's some interesting things there, but again, it's not very original. It's very Renfieldish. So yeah, it's not my favorite. I was really surprised, Jason, to hear you say that you love this one as much as you do, because I just don't see it. But whatever. But like I say, I will watch a Christopher Lee as Dracula movie anytime, because it's awesome, and I enjoy. And I think I agree with Drew that the costumes are kind of all over the place, but I do enjoy the visuals of of the costumes and the crazy sets, and I don't know, it's kind of fun.
Wonderful, thank you, Tony. What about you?
Yeah, I like the movie. Again, a lot of the things that Julia said, I absolutely get the kind of how annoying how gratuitous, I guess, the scene with the Burgermeister and his daughter is. Like, it's gratuitous, but I don't know. I guess, like I said, if I was much younger and this was on cable, that would be already a plus. Woo! I can't believe. Oh, did you see what was on last night? So But you're totally right. That is very gratuitous, and just, hey, look, here's what we can do, because we're gonna, let's get some butts in the seats because of this. But a lot of the negatives you're talking about, I'm like, oh well, sign me up for all of this. I do think that some of the budgetary stuff, especially with the bats, kind of detracts from what they were trying to accomplish with that. I don't mind it, really, but there were some lofty goals with that don't quite reach how terrifying I think they're supposed to be. I think this Dracula is interesting in how powerful he is, and I like the ideas behind kind of a reboot, remake, follow the beats kind of thing, but with some twists. I enjoy the movie. I think it's in all its lurid, hyper red glory, it's cool. I like also that Dracula, by the way, has this little Dracula crest that says Dracula on it, painted onto his coffin. It's like, it doesn't have it's a weird painting. It doesn't seem to have the kind of family crest reverence that you would expect.
No, you're
It's
right.
kind of
That
it,
seems very poor.
it's kind of
What's
a like
interesting
van art kind of
What's
Dracula crest.
interesting though is, like we did Son of Dracula last week, and the Dracula crest in that one has a raven on it, and this one has a raven on it, and both times I'm like, wouldn't a dragon make more sense since he's Dracula?
Or a bat.
Absolutely.
A bat, a bat at the
Yeah.
very least. Like I don't understand the raven other than it's like a bird that's kind of associated with
No, you're
with
right.
horror.
With horror. Yeah, I mean, in a sense, remember also that we as people who read more are probably we're more aware of the folklore around this stuff than the producers, or than the producers assumed that the audience would be. And so, yes, Dracula means son of the dragon. So oddly, that would probably be a more logical thing to have, but they just don't do it, and by the way, I just want to say I'm so struck by the thing that Drew said. I really love it. The idea that Hammer and Universal are in conversation in ways that the rest of the vampire body of work is not. That's amazing, and I really like that. That says
You
a
could
lot to me.
write a book on that. Like I'm surprised somebody hasn't actually.
Oh, I'm sure that David Scal like basically gets at that. But anyway, that's yeah, that's a really, really good point.
Now that I think of it, I kind of wish that the logo was just like somebody just subbed in the alternative tentacles bat logo. That would be hilarious just to see a thing where it's like, wait, is that the alternative tentacles bat that's on his coffin? That would be hilarious. I don't know. I kind of want to do that edit because that would make as much sense as some of the business that's on that particular crest.
But we've seen this art before that looks like it belongs on the side of a custom van. To your point, like even in The Omen, Okay. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, but yeah, I dig this movie. It's not the top of Hammer really, but it's got some cool stuff, and I like a lot of the bits. It where it diverges is kind of interesting in a lot of ways, and definitely ups the horror part of things. And it's how lurid and bloody, and it's got bizarre stuff like, hey servant, go hack up the body of my former maybe could have been bride, but didn't, but she should have never fallen for that handsome guy. So let's make an example of her. That all that stuff is just like, whoa, where's this coming from? So I get where critics of the time might have thought that this wasn't as great, but a lot of the negatives are completely fine with me.
Excellent.
I'll watch an infinite amount of schlocky, and this isn't schlocky really. I just what some people consider lesser horror, I'll watch a lot of that. So maybe that says more about me than anything else.
Wonderful. Drew, what about you?
Again, I do think this movie is better than its somewhat beguiling reputation as worst Hammer Dracula movie. I don't know that it's even my third favorite Jason, but it's a Hammer Dracula, and as I said, Hammer horror is kind of the potato chip of horror movies. Like I immediately want to go watch more of these after I've gotten the flavor in my mouth, so to speak. So like I will probably end up popping in some Hammer this week.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I think I'll probably this week as I'm working, I'll probably be watching like Taste the Blood, and Dracula's Risen from the Grave, and maybe even the 70s ones, 80, 72, and what's the last one? I'm sorry. Satanic Rites. I actually kind of enjoy Satanic Rites, but
it's the best title, if nothing else.
Yes. Yeah. So that title was so offensive to people in the United States that like especially in Texas, I mean, you wouldn't call something, people wouldn't go to something called Satanic Rites, so it was called something else. I can't even remember what it was called. Like something like
Platonic Rites of Dracula.
Yes,
they're just friends. Cool. All these Draculas, like they watch TV together. I got a totally different movie. I did not expect this from Platonic Rites of Dracula. You guys have sold me the wrong bill of sale.
It should have just been called The Rites of Dracula.
Sure.
I believe that it was called Dracula and His Vampire Bride, which is literally
lame.
It's lame.
That's what
No,
it's called on Tubi, though.
On where? On Tubi?
It's
really?
on Tubi right now as Dracula and his vampire brides.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's a generic title for the least generic Dracula movie that Hammer ever made. Well, with the exception possibly of Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires. But
I mean, you might as well just call it Dracula, Dracula, Dracula. That's as good as anything else. I mean,
the original title, and I'm not making this up, was Dracula is Alive and Well and Living in London, which Christopher Lee...
That's worse than all of them, I'll be honest.
Like, Christopher Lee flat out said,
No.
I absolutely... No, under no circumstances.
It's like early rap lyrics. You're like, no, I'm just describing what I'm doing. And I went to the store and I did the thing.
You can hear him.
Dracula's at his house. Now he's eating a sandwich. Like, that's a terrible name.
I mean, you can hear his frustration as he says, he goes, it's preposterous. It's a comic title. You can just hear his like.
I just
anger.
hope that he repeated it in a just scathing British accent. Like, let me repeat this to you. And he just says the title in just like a scathing, just flat. And they go, oh, yeah, okay.
Oh my goodness.
Now that you put it that way.
So it became the Satanic
Dracula's alive and living in his flat, and sometimes he goes out on weekends, but mostly he just sits at home and reading the Times.
It's funny. I think about what you talking about this.
Yes.
It takes me back to when I saw the Coppola Dracula with my parents.
Yeah.
And I still very much remember, coming away from that movie and my mom saying, I guess I never understood that Dracula gets his power from the devil. Huh. And I don't understand that. Like, and my mom's not a stupid person.
Right.
She's actually very well educated, but it's the cognitive dissonance, I think, there on the behalf of some people, and perhaps the change of the titles, plays into that. Like, oh, we have to make this seem less illicit than it actually is.
Yeah. Right. Yes. That's an excellent point. Like, you can kind of get, if you're one of these people who doesn't like to think about Satanism in the 70s, you can kind of get Dracula's a vampire. He shrinks away from the cross because the cross is holy and he's bad. But you don't think about the fact that, yes, Dracula is satanic. And you certainly shy away from basically it's a superstitious fear.
Well, it's also like Dracula's the bad guy. That's the other thing that I get. Like, part of Satanic Panic is like, in reality, you're still like, when you're playing D&D or all these things, like, you're fighting. You're mostly fighting the devil or evil.
Yeah.
It's not. None of the things are showing you like, hey, but it's an interesting dichotomy too. And I don't want to go too far afield, but multiple times during Satanic Panic, for example. Yeah. Time and time again, you'd see on video and you would read that a lot of people turn towards ritual Satanism, as it were, or said they were. Whether they were or not, this is just in the media. Sure. This is what they're admitting. It started because the rituals they learned while going to Catholic church and that very rigid ritualism.
Yeah.
They would go, well, I got the same thing, those rituals applied in the Satanic church, because often they're the inversion of those in the way they read Latin and stuff. But it was fascinating to me, especially as a kid who went to Baptist church and Catholic church at the time, Protestant church, and like how many people went, well, my Catholic upbringing was an easy route to this other ritualism.
Yes.
I'm not making a judgment call. This is just what was, but that where religion twisted it wasn't seeing Rosemary's Baby. Right. It wasn't seeing the satanic rites of Dracula. It was this side. I wasn't getting what I thought I should get out of one thing, and I felt like I was getting the thing I sought in another venue. It had nothing to do with watching some things where Dracula is literally powered by the devil and we're supposed to fight him as good people. And so I'm always like, wow, if your faith is so weak that watching a horror movie where people are trying to defeat evil makes it seem seductive, then that's on you, my friend.
Yes. No,
like it's so
absolutely
bizarre, and that's never really championed. I don't know, but yeah, that's weird that satanic rites of Dracula has to be changed. But it's I mean, you did have at the time. My mom remembered like when Rosemary's Baby came out and stuff like that. The local church is telling them like, here's the movies you should not go see. Right?
Yeah. No, I remember.
That's
I remember
people in the back taking notes. Okay.
Yeah. Well, of course, all the teenagers.
Movie list for this week.
All the teenagers go, really?
Yep.
There was this notion
that it can't be that bad.
That even though the satanic characters in those movies were the bad guys, that nevertheless they were fascinating and sexy, which was undoubtedly true. So
right.
Yeah. No, fascinating stuff. I have nothing to add other than I'm so thankful that we got to spend this time talking about one of my favorite Hammer movies. So I'm very thankful. For all our misgivings about it, I'm just thankful that we got a chance to talk about it. So thank you very much. Let's go to endorsements. Like what you've been reading, listening, watching. Julia has been all podcasts all the time this week, I know. We're gonna start with Julia. Julia, what do you got for us? What do you recommend?
Well, podcast wise, I think I've already gone through the ones that I listened to, but we actually started watching finally, and I know you're gonna be like, finally, Los Spookies, which I know Tony has recommended often.
It's so good.
And it is in fact very, very funny. We laughed a lot. It's really cute. So we only watched a couple episodes, but we'll definitely keep watching it. It's very cute.
I love that show so much.
It's great.
Tony, what about you?
Well, in addition to all the other movies, which you can catch, I hate to plug it too much, but I have a bunch of reviews that I did during Fantastic Fest. So some of the movies may be coming out. I'll be updating there's a Fantastic Fest Fiends group, and there is, I forgot who does it, and I'll have to look back, but there is a person who tracks when things are being released. So hopefully we'll get some of these movies sooner than later, and we can start having there's a few I want to do on the podcast. Definitely Evil Eyes is one of them that we just have to when it comes out. I'm putting my foot down now that we're all going to watch Evil Eyes and review it on the podcast. But all right. There's since then you can catch those recaps. They're on Twitter, on Facebook, and I watched let's see, what was it, The Strange Case of Jackie Kalu, about a healer who encounters a woman who's trying to heal, and it's a really interesting kind of introspective movie about his grandmother was a healer and she passes away, and he's left to kind of pick up the pieces on believe in himself, and also what is the nature of the nature of what's happening is, does this person want or need to be cured? I thought it was really cool. Drew, I think you'd really dig it if it comes out. And then I also watched Chop and Steal, which is about the guys behind the Found Footage Festival, and part of it involves they decided to prank like local morning shows by signing up as different people. In fact, launched the career of darn, I feel so stupid. The actor who plays Colin Robinson on
oh yeah, I know the character.
Shadows.
Yes,
but he came on morning shows as a Mark Rock.
Okay.
He came on talk shows as a really a yo-yo aficionado, but he was not, and had never really done yo-yo anything. So part of it is they create these characters, Chop and Steal, who are strong men, but obviously they're not strong. They do things like smash wicker baskets or throw sticks at each other. But it's about the genesis of Found Footage Festival, and then their subsequent lawsuit where they get sued for fooling. They go a step too far and fool the wrong people and get sued. But Chop and Steal, Rain kind of pointed out that's kind of mean to fool people that way, but watching their bits was and just the level, they do a thing where they come on as a chef and they blend all these supposedly there's a cookbook about doing stuff with your leftovers for Thanksgiving, and they put it, mostly it ends up putting in a blender, and then the host drinking their terrible concoctions, stuff like that, which was the kind of absurdity that I really laughed at. So Chop and Steal actually it's fast. That stuff is just hilarious to me in its own right. And then also the kind of seeing the genesis of the found footage festival, which is where they would go to various like Goodwill stores. It started with them finding a McDonald's training video, janitorial training video.
Yes.
And that thing is its own deal. And so then progressed to them putting.
I was just looking for when this came out. 2022, Chop and Steal. Okay.
Chop and Steal, and it's that that was at Fantastic Fest, and I'm catching up on things I missed. So and stuff that was on Fantastic Fest at home, some of this. So there's a bunch more, and I'll probably have some more recommendations next week. But those are the two I saw since then. And then Lots of Spookies is great. I'm still catching up on a bunch of things. Mm-hmm. There's so many movies to watch.
No, for sure.
Which is crazy considering I just watched what to some people is all of them, right?
Yeah.
By the way, I've also been super happy. My friend Josh Hurtado and his crew had super success showing RRR in various theaters, and they just sold out in Hollywood in IMAX. And I just seeing cool people. Josh would also be a great person to have on the podcast sometime too, because he's really cool and has a lot to say about things. But he's, he, and it's not just him, but he's been a big factor. He's been an aficionado of Indian cinema for a long time. So seeing a cool person be successful at bringing, big movies and from overseas and in the same way that Fantastic Fest brings things, or in fact bigger in some cases, is pretty great. So there's lots of stuff going on at Beyond Fest this week, and that was also cool. In fact, I think a bunch of Fantastic Fest directors who had stuff at Fantastic Fest were then going immediately to Beyond Fest to be part of that. So it's kind of an embarrassment of riches if you're in various parts of the country, as far as seeing cool genre stuff. So that's really cool. Anyway, I know I've gone far afield, but that's where I'm at.
Well, you did see like 30-something movies. So.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's see. Drew, what about you?
I have been working nearly nonstop. The only day I really took off this week was my birthday, actually, which was Wednesday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
I did see Jamie took me to see a pretty cool dinosaur documentary on the IMAX, which was called Dinosaurs of Antarctica, where they follow paleontologists on the ice. And it was cool. It was in 3D. It was beautiful. It made me both afraid of Antarctica, but also kind of want to visit. So if you have an IMAX that's showing it, I do recommend that. I also I also saw like a 4K restoration of Raiders of the Lost Ark that same day, which was it was beautiful. Like I saw details in that movie that I've never seen before, and it was kind of like seeing it again for the first time. So it was really, really great. I got some great presents that I haven't got a chance to look at really properly yet, including the Criterion Collection version of Island of Lost Souls, which is of course the adaptation of Island of Dr. Moreau with Charles Laughton and Bela Lugosi. It's a great film. I'm happy that it's now in my collection, and I'm looking forward to tearing that open. I am going to plug a couple of things personally, though, because as I said, I've been working my ass off. It's now go time. I am going to be in Dallas next week for a book signing and Q&A at Black Cat Comics and Records. I will be there from 4 in the afternoon to 9 in the evening. Come by, get a comic signed, buy a comic, say hello, talk to me about the podcast, talk to me about horror movies, talk to me about anything. But just come by and say hi if you're in the DFW area. Also, go to Global Comics, that's comics with an X.com. I am currently in the process of adding all of Halloween Man, which is why I have barely had my face away from a top this week. But yeah, all of Halloween Man is going to be on there for free. So you have no reason not to try the Global Comic Forum, and you have no reason not to read Halloween Man. We have had an obscene amount of people reading this so far, but this, and we're still even in the soft launch phase. So please come by, check out this entire comic book world that you may have only heard about through the podcast all these years. Now you have a chance to really dig into it cheaply and from the safety of your own home.
Wonderful. Totally be sure and post on the page if you haven't. And Tony, there was something else that you wanted to mention.
Oh yeah, I totally would be remiss. One of the movies I mentioned the most in my recap episodes for Fantastic Fest is a movie called Vesper, and it is out on VOD now, and it has some theatrical release as well. So I wanted to make sure. I think it's on Prime, if I'm looking correctly. Yeah, you can rent it on Prime right now.
And it's a French science fiction movie.
Yeah, dystopian.
Really good. Yeah.
Science fiction. It is just beautiful. I mean, the production design, it's dark. It's a very it doubles down on dystopia, no doubt. I would like to cover that eventually as well, because I think it's really well made. But it was one of the standouts for me as far as, if nothing else, for story, for production design. It's just, everything looks lived in. It feels, I mean, it's dark and grim and lived in, but the beautiful parts are exceptionally beautiful in that. And really, I know it's cliche, but every bit of the budget is up on screen. Like, you can just, it's an impressive piece of work just from the production design. So, and it came out on VOD as Fantastic Fest was ending. So if that sounds like something that's up your alley, you want to see some dystopian sci-fi with just amazing production design, and a lot about class. And in fact, Jason, some of the things we kind of sort of hit on in SciComm are in this, that they're dependent on these certain people unlocking these seeds for their crops. They basically have to get a license to grow food in a way. And yeah, there's a fantastic blend of practical and CG there. It was something else.
Thank you.
Yeah, they even had there's a drone that's in it. They even had that at Fantastic Fest. Like, they flew it around a little bit. That was kind of cool.
Cool.
But I just thought that was cool that you could catch some of the things you can catch right now. Which are
that, and by the way, Hellraiser coming.
Hellraiser
in about a week.
Hellraiser and Werewolf by Night coming very
Hellraiser
soon.
Coming in about a week to Hulu. Werewolf by Night coming sometime this month to
which we'll be
Disney.
covering.
And we will be doing an episode on Werewolf by Night. I also want to draw to people's attention. My endorsement is Bruno Nicolai's soundtrack for El Conde Dracula, Count Dracula, 1970. It will put you in the mood for Halloween. But I have lots of YouTube recommendations like that. But the other thing that I wanted to mark is that in September, it was the year's anniversary of when a woman intoned to us about dazzling images on a huge silver screen.
Oh my God! Oh my God! You didn't
time.
remind me when I was doing my endorsements.
And,
yes, is that your endorsement?
So that began a year ago at the AMC as Nicole Kidman comes into in this commercial that they basically play before all movies at AMC. Nicole Kidman comes in and now leads us in what is apparently our national anthem of somehow
it's
heartbreak feels good in a place like this.
I've actually, because we go to AMC all the time, I actually will go to the bathroom specifically when she starts talking, just to not have to listen to that commercial.
Yes,
anymore.
So SNL a year into showing that thing, SNL ran a sketch this weekend where Chloe Fineman does a Nicole Kidman impression as she reads this, and all of the people in the theater stand up and salute and start reciting it with her until finally. I wouldn't begin to spoil it. It's amazing, and it ties into our horror theme here.
It's awesome. No, it was great. Just you can just Google. You don't have to actually. Although I did actually enjoy this season premiere of SNL. But if you don't want to watch the whole episode, just Google.
It's online everywhere.
AMC,
lots of people covered it.
And it'll be.
Yes, it's wonderful.
Gosh,
Nicole Kidman's been a good sport because she's like, I did the commercial. I don't know why people are so into it, but it's true. It's dazzling images on a huge silver screen.
I hate it. I hate it so much. I mean, it's not a bad commercial. I'm just so sick
where our
of it.
stories are perfect and powerful.
my
And
God.
yeah, wonderful. Anyway, all right, everybody, thank you for discussing Scars of Dracula. We will be back next week. What is on the docket for next week? Hang on.
Werewolf by Night.
Werewolf by Night is next week. Wowie zowie. Gosh. Okay. We'll be back. I can't wait. Tony's already seen it. It's coming to Disney Plus. This is a great month. So
I will relish watching it again. I will say that.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful week. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Night.
Night.